Greetings, citizens of YouTube. It's the Smooth Terrorist once again, and this is going to be a video about Jerry Sandusky. And right away I know what you guys are thinking, like, whoa, Smooth Terrorist, you're a little bit late to the rodeo on this one. That shit happened like a million internet years ago. What's your deal? Well, the situation is, when this story first broke in the headlines, I just glossed right over it. I didn't pay any fucking attention at all. And the reason why is because I've carefully trained myself over the years to just tune out anything that has anything to do with football. So what most likely happened is all I heard was the words assistant coach. And I was just like... Because that's what I do. If football is going this way, I'm going that motherfucking way. I don't give a fuck about it. I never have. I think it's boring and gay. But for those who don't know, Jerry Sandusky is he was an assistant coach of the Penn State University football team under Joe Paterno, who the media assures me is legendary, because they always call him the legendary Joe Paterno. Every time they talk about him, it's the legendary Joe Paterno, so whatever. And this guy is accused of being a child molester, and he's been convicted of that. And to the best of my knowledge, the sentencing has not been passed yet. Like, they're still working out what it's going to be. But legal experts speculate that he's going to get about 450 years of prison time. And, you know, if you're an American like I am, you're so used to that draconian sentencing that you don't even think about it anymore, and it's like, oh yeah, of course you get 10 years for stealing a pack of smokes. Like, we've just come to accept that and think about it as commonplace. But let me put this in a little bit of perspective for you. In the United Kingdom, the maximum sentence for a murder is 20 years in prison. And we're talking about murder, not like touching somebody under the pants. So this is just crazy shit. But the sentencing isn't what's crazy, even though it is. What's crazy is the fact that there seems to be no hard evidence against this guy. Like, none. Zero. And I'm not going to claim that I'm any kind of expert on this case. I've only read a few news articles and read the Wikipedia entry. So if there's anybody out there that's more informed than me, go ahead and set me straight in the comments section below. If there is some kind of hard evidence that I don't know about, I would love for you to set me straight and set the record straight, because I am just flabbergasted by this. I'm blown away. I'm blown away that this dude is going to die behind bars in a 12 by 9 foot concrete cell without a single shred of fucking evidence to corroborate these witnesses' accounts. Now, what is hard evidence? Well, that would be like a photograph of him raping a kid, an audio recording of him raping a kid, a video recording of him raping a kid, his fingerprint on a kid's dick, perhaps a DNA sample swabbed from semen out of some little kid's asshole. You know, that is what's hard. That's hard evidence. Now let me tell you guys what is not hard evidence. Hearsay. In other words, eyewitness testimony. Eyewitness testimony is bullshit. It doesn't count for dick. And I feel a little silly being an anarchist who doesn't even believe in the rule of law and having to sit here and explain to you fucking animals how the justice system is supposed to work and like why we have a trial by jury system and all that. But I guess I'm gonna fucking have to, because it seems like Americans have forgotten how that shit is supposed to work. But let's get into the Sandusky thing a little bit, because what I want to talk about first is public opinion. Because really, you know, the law is what it is and whatever. But public opinion is where somebody's really either convicted or found innocent. And we all know that. I mean, we've seen that in the OJ trial. If the public supports you, you're going to walk. If the public condemns you, you're going down. And it doesn't really matter what happens in the courtroom, because the courts follow public opinion, because nobody wants a fucking riot on their hands. You know, I have watched Jerry Sandusky's press statements and his interviews with the press. And I can understand why you guys think that he's a pedophile, but I don't. And I'm not saying that I think he's innocent. And I'm not saying that he's guilty either. I don't know. The fact is, I have no fucking clue, and neither do you. But I strongly suspect that he's innocent. And something I want to point out right now, just in case anybody missed the beginning of this video, is that I'm not a Penn State fan. I'm not like the Beavers or something. I'm not like a rabid Penn State Beavers football fan. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't give a shit. I just think that an innocent guy is going to die behind bars because of what's essentially a moral panic that's happening in the United States of America. Now, the reason why I think he looks so creepy and he looks so guilty to all of you guys is because Jerry Sandusky likes children. And in the United States of America today, if you like children, that means that you want to fuck them. That's pretty much the point that we've gotten to, as one of my new favorite stand-up comics, Bill Burr, pointed out. If you so much as talk to a kid these days, somebody's going to accuse you of being a pedophile. And I've experienced this myself. I was on Blog TV a while back, and for anybody who doesn't know what it is, Blog TV is a streaming video service. It's kind of like Google Plus or Stickam. You know, it's a host that broadcasts a show and everybody watches and you can chat with the host. Well, I was in the audience of somebody else's Blog TV show. And ironically, it was a grown woman in her 30s who I found attractive, which is the reason that I was there to begin with. And I did not have operator privileges in this show, but somebody else did. And an operator has the power to kick people out of the show. Well, what happened is the host got up for a minute to go get a drink or do whatever. And her daughter came down and sat in front of the camera. And the daughter was like, I don't know, she looked like she was about 7 years old. 7, 8 years old, somewhere around there. And, you know, she sits down in front of the camera, cute kid, and she's like, hi. And I typed in the chat, I was like, hello, sweetheart, what's your name? How are you doing today? You know, completely innocent stuff. One of the operators says, you fucking pedo, and kicks me out of the show. Now, you know, unlike a lot of people wouldn't have done what I did next, but I made another account and went back because I'm a fucking troll and I don't give a fuck. And I didn't go back in order to win or like get revenge. I had to talk to this guy. I had to get inside this guy's head and understand why he did what he did. So I went back and I said, hey, I'm the guy that you just kicked out a minute ago. How come you think I'm a pedophile? And he said, because you talked to the kid. You know, you talked to so-and-so's daughter. So that's all it takes these days, apparently. And it's not like I said, like, hey, little girl, what's your favorite position? Or like, hey, what kind of underoos do you have on under that oshkosh bagosh jumper? Or whatever. You know, like, all I fucking said was, hi, you know, hello, sweetie, what's your name? How you doing today? You know, I was trying to be nice to a kid. I was trying to be a nice guy, because there was a time when people used to be nice to kids. And apparently you can't do that anymore. And I shudder to think of the emotional damage that this generation of kids is going to grow up with, because they're treated basically like lepers, like pariahs, because they have to be. I mean, I don't even want to think about what it would do to somebody psychologically if, like, you're a little kid and you go up to a grown-up, and you know, kids crave the attention of adults and they crave the approval of adults. So let's imagine that you're a little kid, you go up to some adult, you're like, hi, mister, how you doing? And the guy's like, whoa, I don't fucking know you, get away from me. Hey, I'm not a pedophile. Look, I never touched him. Hey, I don't know what you guys are looking at. I mean, that is going to have an effect, and I can't even fucking begin to guess what that effect is going to be, and frankly, I don't want to fucking know. But look, that's all besides the point. The point is that when I look at Jerry Sandusky's interviews, and when I look at his press statements, I can understand why you guys think that he's a pedo. It's just because he likes kids. I mean, he's a fucking assistant coach. He's a dude that runs a children's charity organization. Like, you don't take a career path like that if you don't like kids. I mean, me personally, I don't really like, you know, I'm not saying I don't like kids. Like, I'll talk to them and shit, but, like, I wouldn't want to be around a group of them all day because they annoy the piss out of me in groups. Like, I would never make it as, like, preschool teacher or something because I'd just be like, shut the fuck up and go sit in the corner, give me some, you know, like, I'd lose my patience because I'm just not that, I'm not a kid type person unless it's like I could deal with kids one-on-one, but I couldn't never deal with a crowd of them. But guys like, I mean, people like Sandusky obviously can, and that's, you know, the fact that he likes them is enough in an American's opinion to be like, whoa, this guy says he likes spending time with kids, what does that mean? You know, like, read between the lines, and what? He's a fucking assistant coach, you dumbasses. Of course he fucking likes spending time with kids, that's why he does the job. So, let's get a little bit into what a moral panic is, and a little bit more about the specifics of this case. Now, I'm not, you know, I've been meaning for a long time to make a video about the pedophile panic in the United States right now, and this is not going to be that video, because that's a huge topic. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what a moral panic is. Some examples of moral panics include the Satanism scare of the 1980s. In the 1980s, everybody was convinced that there were Satanists everywhere, and people were sacrificing children to Satan, and that if you played Judas Priest records backwards, they were talking about Satan. And, you know, despite the fact that there's no hard evidence that any kind of satanic ritual, child abuse, or murders ever occurred even so much as once, everybody was convinced that this was true. Another example would be the Red Scare of the 1950s. Oh, everybody's a communist. There's a pinko hiding behind every book. Everybody's a fucking red. You know, the House Un-American Activities Committee and Senator Joe McCarthy. You know, that's a good example of moral panic. Then, of course, there's the most obvious example, which is the Salem witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts of the 17th century, which I highly suggest you guys read about on Wikipedia because it directly relates to this not Joe Paterno, this Jerry Sandusky shit. It's like the same fucking thing. It's history repeating itself. Big time. Big time. Now, you know, there's, as Jerry Sandusky's defense team themselves pointed out, a lot of these witnesses not witnesses, a lot of these victims, quote-unquote victims, didn't start coming forward until it was publicly known that there was going to be a lucrative settlement with the university. So that gives them a cash motivation to want to come forward and say, like, oh yeah, he fucked me in the ass when I was a kid, let me get a piece of that pie, let me get some of that settlement payout. But I don't really think that money is the reason why this is happening. I think what it has to do with is mass hysteria. Because, you know, these people that claim to be victims of Jerry Sandusky all tell a very similar story, and that looks bad to the public at large and to a jury. When they're all kind of talking about these rituals that he would do and how it was always the same. Well, let me give you guys an example that counteracts that. The same thing happened during the Satanism scare of the 1980s. There were all these people who were coming forward remembering satanic abuse that happened to them when they were kids. And even though these people, these victims, quote unquote, didn't know each other or have any connection with one another, they would all tell the same story. They would describe these rituals in great detail. And their stories would corroborate one another. Their stories would back each other up. And later it came out that none of this happened. It was all complete bullshit. It was complete nonsense fabrication. And you might ask yourself, well, how does this happen? How do all these different people tell the same story if it's not true? The answer is mass hysteria. The answer is it's very easy for experts to lead a witness. And let me give you an example of how this is done. Let's say that I am the police, the Satanism expert, because there were actually people that had that title in the 1980s, as fucking retarded as that is. There were like Satanism experts making money off this shit. Or let's say that I'm like a psychologist, a therapist or something. And I'm sitting across the table from a victim that's recovering their memories of the abuse, right? I'm sitting there with a pad of paper. And I'm asking questions like this. Were they wearing black robes with red trim on them? Yeah, I think I do remember that they were wearing black robes with red trim on them. Okay, check. Were they chanting in Latin? Yeah, you know what? I do think I remember that there was some Latin chanting going on. Okay, check. Were they listening to Judas Priest and playing the record backwards? Yeah, you know what? Fuck, I do remember some Judas Priest songs playing that night. This is how this shit works. It is so fucking easy to lead a witness. And one of the things that the Milgram experiments of Stanley Milgram from the 1950s, psychologist experiments, teaches us is that the power of authority is very persuasive. If an expert is interviewing you, somebody who has some position of authority, you will want to give that person the answers that they want to hear. And this is one of the reasons why the police are not supposed to question a suspect without legal representation, because it's too easy to coerce a confession out of somebody. It's really easy to do that. We see that in the example of the West Memphis 3 and other cases. So, you know, the fact that all these sandusky victims are telling the same story does not mean that it's fucking true. And you guys need to realize that. And what I really have a problem with this case is the fact that supposedly he was doing these crimes over such a long period of time. Like, I think they said it was like 10 years that he was working at the university and luring kids to the locker rooms for these sexual encounters. And it went on so long, and he was apparently so unafraid of the consequences and so blatantly out in the open with his activities that all these witnesses actually saw him doing it. Like, for example, a janitor says that he saw him pushing a kid up against the wall in the shower and raping a kid. And another assistant coach says that he saw him raping a kid in the shower. And you gotta wonder why these people didn't come forward at the time. Or why they didn't attempt to intervene and maybe save that kid. And, you know, the obvious answer to why for both of those questions is because it's bullshit. It's bullshit. They're lying. They're lying their fucking asses off. Now, let's put aside the matter of the cash settlement with the university as being a motive why people might lie. Let's put that aside. When you study the history of moral panics, and I highly suggest that everybody go to Wikipedia and read about the Salem witch trials. That's Salem, like the cigarettes, witch trials that happened in Massachusetts in the 17th century. What we find in cases like this is that once a person gets accused, there's never any shortage of eyewitnesses that come forward and say that they saw them doing something. Somebody gets accused of being a witch, and the whole village comes forward and says, like, oh yeah, I saw Goody What's-Her-Fuck casting a spell on my cows and making them give spoiled milk. Or I saw her flying on a broomstick in front of the moon, and I saw her out in the woods talking to Satan and making a deal with the devil. I saw her talking to her black cat. You know, all these people will fucking come forward and bear false witness against their neighbor, to put it in Christian terms. Because that's how moral panic, that's how mass hysteria works. It's mob mentality. Once somebody gets accused, everyone will start doing it. And the weirdest thing about mass hysteria is that they might not even necessarily be lying. Because with mass hysteria, these false witnesses might actually believe that they're telling the truth. And it's sort of like this strange mass hypnosis that happens. It's just one of those weird principles of human nature. But the fact is, at the end of the day, a man is going to spend the rest of his life in a 12-foot by 9-foot concrete and steel cell. And he's going to die in that cell. And there is not a shred, not a fucking iota of hard physical evidence that proves that he's guilty of the crimes that he's being accused of. There's no proof besides hearsay and eyewitness testimony. You know, and anybody can fucking say they witnessed anything. I can fucking say that I witnessed you planning to kill the president, you know. I mean, and people can fucking lie. I mean, I thought we all kind of understood that. Isn't that why there's a trial system, so that, you know, somebody's life doesn't get thrown away based on accusations and rumors? I mean, isn't that kind of why there's supposed to be a standard of evidence in fucking law? It just fucking, I mean, I almost want to stop watching the news sometimes, because it just gets worse and worse in this country. I swear to God. Anyway, and like I said, if any of you guys know something that I don't, and there is actually some kind of hard evidence, please set me straight and make me feel better about this whole thing. But I gotta tell you right now, as of this moment, there is nothing short of hard evidence, and we're talking about photographs, fingerprints, video recordings, audio recordings, DNA samples. There is nothing short of hard evidence like that that's going to make me believe that this guy is guilty, even if he himself comes out and confesses that he did it. Because the justice system has had hold of him for long enough to brainwash him into thinking that he really is a pedophile. Because one thing that we saw with the Salem witch trials and the Spanish Inquisition is that it's easy to coerce somebody that's accused of these crimes into saying that they're guilty. If you torture a witch long enough, they will tell you that they really are a witch. They'll tell you that they did make a deal with Satan, that they did put a curse on their neighbor's livestock. You know, and that doesn't necessarily make it fucking so, to quote Nice Guy Eddie from Reservoir Dogs. Okay? So even if Sandusky himself comes out and says, yeah, I raped a kid, at this point, I would not believe him. There's nothing short of hard physical evidence that's going to convince me. And I'm not saying he's innocent. I am not saying he's innocent. I'm just saying that to be sentenced 450 years of prison without hard evidence is bullshit. Anyway, this has been the Smooth Terrorist, and if you enjoyed this video, then download it, re-upload it, mirror it, parody it, make it your own, because the pedophiles at Google cannot censor me unless you let them. Keep it smooth.